All right.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Are we on?
Yep, rolling.
Boom.
All right, we're here. Welcome back to the Moen Podcast, episode 9.
I think I've lost count. 9, I think, though. 9
We're
or
at
10.
9. The Moen Podcast, rejoin us on conversations we would have had anyway. I think that's the shortest way I've done that.
That's the best way to do it.
I have a couple things today before we... First of all, I'm Matt Brozick. That's Wade Abid. We have a super cool guest today, but I'm going to hold off for a second. Thought of a couple things. One,
Okay.
I want to thank Pastel Pencil for our cool stickers. We're
Yes,
official
thank
now.
you, Pastel Pencil. They
Thank
turned
you.
out great.
Very nice.
So Pastel Pencil, we're super excited about that. Bolton and Mink, what is it? Real People, Real Solutions.
Real big coffee cups.
Real Big Coffee Cups at Bolton Mink Studios.
On the gram.
On the gram. Also, I got a delivery from Team Rhino Outdoors today. Super excited about that.
Okay.
So I want to give a shout out to Jeff. And today's angler.
Really?
Really? Yes.
So today's angler reached out. We're trying to court them as a sponsor. Today's angler, if you ever gone to their YouTube channel, it's amazing. Tons of views, great fishing. So they responded.
So we're courting them to try
Okay.
to actually not necessarily sponsorship, but trying to get them on
the show. Yeah. And
So
so
we're-
we do like all fishing episode.
Sounds
Yes.
wonderful.
So
All
if
we
you
do is
go,
just talk about fishing stories.
They have this crazy, like my favorite one that they have is there's catching huge sconnies, and
Muskies.
they call them sconnies,
Yeah,
but
giant muskies.
they're murdering the muskie, and they caught like 12 muskies or something in an afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't like muskie fishing as much as these guys do, and when I've gone there, we catch like nothing or one fish. So for them to catch that many in like a day was. I'd never
Amazing.
seen anything like it.
If you're a muskie fisherman and you catch one a day, like you're really, really good. You're top notch.
Yeah.
You might go 5 days and not even see
Yeah.
a fish or catch a fish. So for them to catch that many is amazing.
Anyway, so that's really cool.
So yeah, we're hashtagging them and professionally and politely harassing them to get on the show. Pelican Coolers, who is going to sponsor us very soon.
Best cooler ever made.
Best cooler. Anyway, totally kidding. But before we get into this, I have a really funny story about the show that you guys might find interesting. Now, these guys don't know anything about this. So I'm going back through, and I actually didn't realize this until I was doing laundry. So I had a brown button-up shirt
Yeah.
for one of our episodes. I think it was Shelly Sabatka.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing laundry. Now, this is something that's happened a couple weeks ago, and I just keep forgetting to tell the story.
Okay.
Going and doing laundry, and I'm taking the shirt out, and I look, and there's like a spot right here, like a stain on my shoulder. This is how you know you're a dad. This is a great dad story. So apparently what I must have done is I have a 6-month-old daughter. I have 4 kids. So 8, 6, 2, and 6 months. So I must have been holding her before we came down to shoot the show, because when I got home, she was in bed. So there's no way it could have happened after. And so I look, there's a puke stain right here on my shoulder.
For episode 2 or 3?
I think it's 3 with, I think it was Shelly Sabatka,
Yeah.
I think. It's a brown, like, button-up shirt. And so, sure enough, I went back through and looked, and if you look, you can actually see it. So that's when you know you're a dad, when you are wearing a puke shirt to, not your puke, your daughter's puke shirt, to an episode, and you don't even realize it until you're doing laundry like a week and a half later, and it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, look at it. You're fine.
So anyway, Wade, I want you to introduce our guest today. That's my story for the day.
Well, we have somebody here named Jordan Moen. He is a D.P.T, which I believe stands for Doctor of Physical Therapy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. He's coming here from the lovely Mayo Clinic, and he's in his fabulous Mayo blue. So it's a big shout out to Mayo Clinic, and my wife also works at Mayo Clinic, so we love to
Lisa
support
does
the blue.
also.
And Lisa does. So we have a couple medical connections here. So talking about puke and poop and all the other stuff, no problem here.
Right.
And so we have Jordan coming on here today. Little background: I've known Jordan for 4 or 5, 6 years, and we met through a mutual friend. And we live probably like half a mile away from each other. Mm-hmm. Just became friends and hit it off. And I wanted to have him come on here, and we can talk about physical therapy and just kind of that mind-body connection. and what he's seeing out there in the field, pre-COVID, post-COVID. But first, we start out by doing kind of where you're from, where you grew up, and family and kids, and where you went to school. Just a note: most people rush through this really fast because we're so used to saying, I'm Wade. I'm from Waukegan. I'm married to Kelly. I have 2 kids, and they're let's really talk about it. But I want to start out with a few questions. Is it duck, duck, goose, or is it duck, duck,
Gray duck.
Gray duck.
gray duck?
I mean, being a homegrown Minnesotan, it's definitely duck, duck, gray duck.
Thank you
in my
very
book.
much.
Okay, it's not, but that's fine.
Transplants may disagree.
Transplants may disagree.
Yeah.
And so, is it hot dish, or is it casserole?
It's definitely a hot dish.
I would say hot dish. Yeah.
But you would say.
That's how I was raised.
Yeah. But he's from Red Wing, so he doesn't.
I was in Red Wing for the first 18 months of my life. I don't remember.
Who knows what they say there?
The conversations I had with my parents at that point. I don't remember.
Is there a difference between hot dish and casserole, or is it just a name for the region where you're from?
I don't think there's a difference. Do you?
I think it's the same. I
think it's the same thing.
Tomato.
Yeah.
Okay. Does one have tater tots?
Well, there's tater tot hot dish.
So,
Right.
so it's
It's
not
not
that.
tater tot casserole.
There's no difference between tater tot hot dish and tater tot casserole. It is
It's the
depending on where
same
you live.
thing,
Right.
but I think the name is tater tot hot dish.
Okay.
Agreed.
Is it acceptable for a grown man?
And we don't know each other, by the way. Jordan and I
Yeah, so
just
this
met,
is
and we're
what
agreeing
I
on
wanted to
everything.
see.
Indeed.
Okay. So, is it acceptable for a grown man to order tater tots as a side at a restaurant? Like, we have fries, we have tater tots, we have a salad.
That's kind of a dumb question.
Yeah.
Of
See?
course it is.
Yeah.
Tater tots
Why
and
not?
ranch.
I don't know.
You want a burger? Yeah. What do you want with it? Tots and ranch? Got it.
Right.
You want fries or you want tots? It's not really a question.
It's
It's,
like-
tots. It's always tots.
You get tots, yeah.
Yeah.
So, once you go tots, you never go back.
I think it's what I think depending on where you live is what you put on the tots.
Yeah. So, this is a good question. So, what do you put on your tater tots?
Well, I grew up with ketchup, but imagine you might be a mixture of ketchup and mustard or something like that coming for you.
I'm going straight hot sauce now.
I'm going
Hot
straight.
sauce?
I'm going straight sriracha, hot sauce,
Yep.
ketchup.
Yeah, what about gravy and cheese curds?
I'll
That's not.
I'll
you
do
want
that.
poutine?
But I think it's called poutine.
Yeah,
Poutine, but that's. I don't know if it's. Poutine is not
typically
not
tots.
tots. It's fries, right?
Steak fries usually.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Thick-
fries.
thicker steak fries.
Yep, and gravy. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but just imagine tots with gravy.
That would be really good.
But I would
Yeah.
sub that. So speaking of the condition
Sub
of good dieting and health and staying physically fit. So
right on the topic.
okay, so good. I'm not big
We've
on
already talked
segues.
about 1,000 calories a minute
Right.
right now.
Indeed.
Exactly. So, so where are you from? How'd you get started?
Right. So yeah, Jordan Moen. I grew up in a small town in southwest Minnesota on the South Dakota border, called Hendricks, Minnesota. It's a town of about 700 people. I grew up just 5 miles north of town. I have an identical twin brother and an older sister. My dad was a farmer. He retired from farming. So yeah, I'm basically your small town, small town farm boy. Just grain, not livestock, which meant that I didn't have to work as hard as some of my classmates.
Yeah. As far as feeding, milking, and so on.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Dairy farmers, I tell you what, they work harder than anybody else, and there is no vacation from it.
No,
so I was
you never
lucky
get
enough
away.
not to have to do that. Thank God there are people that do.
So what's the order of family? It's. I mean, you have a twin brother, but I don't remember.
My
Are you the oldest, or is it sister?
older sister? She's 4 years older.
Yep. And
Yep.
then you have your brother.
Yep.
Who was born first?
I was born first.
Okay, so
I always hold that above my brother's head. I'm 8 minutes older.
So it's
So
Jordan. and
therefore,
then-
I am wiser and smarter.
Better looking, of course.
Of course.
And well, actually, it's. I mean, it's really.
Sure.
There are some differences.
I don't know. My sister always does give us a hard time because when we were kids, we used to call each other ugly to get mad at each other when it didn't make sense.
It's a mix.
Then again, we were kids.
So you got older sister Jordan, and then
My brother Jared.
Jared, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And he's down in Scottsdale, Arizona. My sister's in Burnsville. But yeah, I grew up in a small
Blaze.
town. That's right. Small town Minnesota. I graduated with 40 people in my class. Pretty much knew every single person in your class extremely well.
Okay.
Were you the largest human in that class?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Okay. So have you guys watched the Dan Patrick Show ever?
Not a little bit, yeah.
So they call in, and what do they say? They're like, 6'2", 180. Ding. So it's hard to tell on TV, but you're a large person. I mean, a larger man.
Yeah.
You have a larger frame.
Yeah. I mean, I look that large. I mean, you're not a short person yourself, so.
But I'm not a large person. Like I have regular sized pillows.
So okay, so, super side note. One is I'm like 6'2", 6'3", and
Yeah.
usually I
Right.
don't look up to someone.
I told you.
when I'm shaking hands, and you told me you're gonna look up to him. I'm like,
Right.
I was like, he's a big dude.
all right.
Yeah.
He's
But
the
here-
biggest like D.P.T. I know.
So we were talking about how when I saw on the schedule you were going to be on the schedule, I'm like, who is this guy? And Wade just like, Google him. So I look up your stuff, and there's a picture of you like professional with a tie. So I'm like, who is this guy? I go on Facebook, just type it in, and I see a picture of you, and it must be your wife in like a Viking costume.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
that guy, you could be like Leif Erikson, no problem.
Right.
Like that was the coolest costume I've ever seen.
Right.
I want to hang out with you and your wife, and we should all have costumes on like that.
I agree. Just have
And
a Vikings night. It'll be good.
that would be awesome. So anyway, I saw that, and I
that was just
called
a
Wade. I'm
random-
like, dude, this guy's
That was
awesome.
That was like a Tuesday.
And that was like a Tuesday because they were having battle night at the house where they fight for scraps.
Right.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So you're
side
finished
note.
up.
So were you the largest human in your class, though?
Yeah.
I was, but my
Okay.
brother's actually got an inch on me.
He's bigger.
Really?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, he got an inch on me, and yeah.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
I think it means his brother's taller.
Well, I
think that's
understand
how
that, but like
happens.
you would think, like genetic makeup, you probably ate the same stuff.
Indeed.
You know what I mean?
Right. It is kind of funny though, like because when you're from a small school like that, there's in small towns, like there's really not a whole lot to do. The country songs hold true, or you're gonna drive around for a while and eventually start a fire somewhere and then go from there.
Yeah.
But there was nothing to do, so we just played sports all the time in our small town. Fourth, fifth, sixth grade, and on
Yeah.
up, we'd play basketball, and we had a team with 6 guys that we had the old school, jerseys that were probably 20 years old. Mm-hmm. But we had myself and my twin brother and a kid who could jump out of the gym. And we'd go to a lot of the bigger towns and
Gary.
we just destroyed teams.
Twin Towers.
And I
So
tell you
awesome.
what, like our principal would get so many phone calls. Well, like, how old are these kids? This is no way they're fourth graders.
got a beard.
Right.
I know.
He's got chest hair. What's going on?
What are you guys doing right now?
Right. So yeah, that was my childhood growing up in a small town and just trying to stay active with sports. But
Yeah.
So what sports did you play?
well, being in a small town, you don't have access to a whole lot of sports, at least in where I grew up. But pretty much it was football, golf, basketball. That was about it. You had the opportunity to do cross country and track, but that was the basics.
Do you still play sports? Do you do like men's league stuff? Do you,
You know,
golf?
we've been trying to. Nowadays, it's obviously tough to do that. We were trying to get in a flag football league or a 7-on-7 league, and there's not enough interest around where we live now. But
Because
Like
they
2
thought
years
that you were
ago, we
gonna
tried
get-
to do that.
Right, a couple
and
years
it
ago, and
totally fell through.
for the most part, I'd love to, but right now, like my kids I'm just busy, getting them, keeping them active, and getting them where they need to be. So.
Yeah.
Other than that, when I bought my house here in Mankato, the first thing I did, I looked at my garage. I said, right next to the garage, that's where the basketball hoops go. And so we'll occasionally have some
Yeah.
battles in the front yard, but that's about the extent of it. Yeah.
So you finish high school, and is it Hendricks High School or Hendricks
So
Primary
it used
School
to
or
be,
something?
it actually used to be Lincoln High, which was a mixture of Hendricks and Ivanhoe, Minnesota, because
It's like combined school district.
Exactly. And that went great for a while until the Polacks and the Norwegians couldn't get along, and now they're separate again. So, but after that it was Concordia College in Moorhead for undergrad.
I don't even know that level of nuanced conflict between
Polacks
those two
and the
different
Norwegians.
people.
You wouldn't think that they don't get along, but again, it's like
So Minnesota.
it's right.
Exactly, right?
Well, it's Polacks and Norwegians, or it's the Bears and the Packers, or Vikings and Packers, whichever way you want to look at it. So whoever's
Yeah.
next door, you're just going to say, "Hey, I hate those guys."
Those guys stink.
Right?
Yeah.
Which
You
is
suck.
which I think like the Norwegians are just better joke writers, which I think is why.
Where did you come up with that?
Because there's so many Polak jokes.
Well, you mean you got the Oli and Lena jokes.
They're not
like,
writing them like
That makes
about
sense.
themselves.
That makes sense.
Right.
Just heavy content on the Polak joke, and they just like, you would get really angry.
Yeah,
You're like, we're gonna have our own high school now.
this is ours.
So then you're the second biggest person in the class after your brother. You graduate, and what years?
Graduated high school in 2001.
Okay.
And then I went on to, like I said, Concordia College of Moorhead and got a degree there. Graduated in 2005 from Concordia College. Played football for the Division III school there. Enjoyed that. That was a wonderful time.
So walk back now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
why did you decide to go to Concordia?
Yeah.
Because you could play football there, or there was a girl, or that's usually has something to do with a girl.
There's like a track there,
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Right. So I was familiar with Moorhead. I had family that lived in Moorhead,
Okay.
so we'd been there a bunch of times. So coming from a small town, I thought about going to University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, but the thought of traveling from one side of campus to the other on a bus was a little bit overwhelming, coming from a town of 700 people. So
Yeah.
I went. I had a number of coaches I was talking to from the football team and the basketball team in Concordia, and I had family in town too, so I thought it made sense. In addition to Concordia is a pretty good pre-med school, and at that time I was pre-med. Shortly after I got into Concordia, experienced everything they had, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do pre-med, so instead of pre-med, searched around a little bit, did some observations, and ended up going into physical therapy partially because I had some I'd seen it. I'd been through it before because in high school I tore my meniscus in my knee, which is kind of a similar story that you'll see from a lot of physical therapists. Well, why'd you go to physical therapy? Simply because you'd seen it. It's had a really significant effect on your life. And that's true for me as well. When I was a senior, I tore my meniscus, like I said. Went to, you hurt your knee in football and you think your athletics life is over.
Yeah.
And being that small town kid, that's all you have. So going to physical therapy, kind of gives you hope again, or gave me hope. And, getting into college and thinking about what I wanted to do. And that had a really positive effect on me, which drove me to why I am in physical therapy today.
Was there a specific therapist that you worked with, or it was just the team in
A
general?
number of them, really.
Yeah.
I worked with the team in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and just really positive, uplifting, and drove you to where you almost threw up, and it was like you left there feeling like you got something done, and there's still hope. So
do you drive the people that you are working with
to throw up every time?
Yeah.
No, not
like-
necessarily, but
They're like, all right, I'm here.
come on, let's keep going.
We have lunch afterwards.
Yep.
So then when you have to make that switch, because it's a D.P.T, which is that means it's more than a bachelor's, and
Right.
so 'cause at the time, I think I had buddies that were maybe a few years older. They went and got their physical therapy degrees, but it wasn't a doctoral program.
Right.
Like it was like a 4-year deal,
Right.
and then you got
Yeah,
So
right
how did that work?
Right around the time of, I don't know, around 2005, 2006 or later, you really started to see a lot of physical therapy schools changing from a master's 2-year program, a master's program, to a doctoral program, to which now I don't know if there are any more master's program. You're seeing
I think they've all switched.
3 to 4 year programs that are all doctorate levels, and really most of those the coursework involved with that is involved with the medical schools. So
Yeah.
and it's true. I went to a grad school, the D.P.T program at the University of Minnesota, and we shared a number of courses with the med school, and that was a really strong program.
So how did you balance time with playing sports, playing football, and getting your degree? I mean, tell us a little bit about. I mean, do they own you at that point, or do you still have some free time? Are you like overwhelmed?
At the Division III level, you do have you have some free time, but I would also argue that being an athlete forces you to develop the schedule, and I think that actually guides you to be a better student because you just have to be. Your coaches won't allow you to fail. It forces you to have structure in your calendar and your schedule.
Schedule or routine or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Right. It's wake up and you do your coursework, your classes, and then from there it's straight to practice, and then you have it's the only time you have to really get anything done.
Yeah.
So after practice is when you get stuff done. Right.
Yeah, and my buddy, and we talked about him on the show before on the transplant episode, but Aaron Sims, pitched at like Alabama A&M, and
Really?
I
didn't know that.
his
When are we going to
brother-
have him on?
I think once he gets cleared, I think he's getting, if it's the 18th, and I think he was green lighted to get, his kidney transplant's should have taken place this morning.
Really?
Oh, nice.
So he pitched, D1, like I said before, just really big, dude, 6'5", kind of 240. He got back down to 199 and got his kidney today from his
Wow.
brother Marcus, who I think he was a first baseman and a catcher at like FAMU, in Florida A&M. So he was so disciplined playing D1 baseball, right? So like he would come to Wisconsin and come visit me at college, like when he had a 5-second break, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "You guys are crazy," because he just like didn't have that kind of freedom. And when he finished school, and got his degree, and super smart guy, like probably got finance and he's top of his class kind of guy. He, in my opinion, this is my opinion, Aaron. So if you watch this, it's my opinion. He kind of went crazy after, college because he didn't have the chance.
Yeah.
Right.
To do anything else because it's a routine, a schedule, and the
Right.
practice. But I think it served him incredibly well in his life.
Like crazy, like couldn't handle the non-routine, or just like, let's just go have fun.
Let's go to happy hour.
Yeah,
Let's go meet people. Let's go have
Being
drinks.
sporadic or spontaneous.
It was like being a young, a young, happy, athletic guy with free time.
The stuff you and I did during college,
Right.
he
That
was
he was
doing it.
like he did
Of course.
after. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Because he was just like, I'm like, dude, slow down. And he's like, I'm making up for lost time, man. So like
Well, good luck with the new kidney.
every time I saw him, and since then he's kind of like that's ramped back down. Obviously, super healthy guy. Prior to some of his health issues, but so my question is, during even for D3 sports, you're committed to a team. I mean, did you play football and basketball there?
I was supposed to play basketball and not football, but then I decided I wanted to do football instead of basketball because basketball had such a long commitment. It was essentially, tell you what, it's pretty much August through March as opposed to football was much, much shorter than that. So that's one of the reasons why I opted for football instead, so I could have some free time outside of sports. Right.
Okay.
I mean, besides that, growing up in that small town, my parents essentially took me to every league, every basketball organization I could ever go to, whether it was AAU or traveling ball. We'd do summer ball, spring ball, fall ball. We'd go to California, Vegas, Kentucky, everywhere, and play ball pretty much 24/7, or not 24/7, all year round. At that point, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this football thing and let basketball be for a little while.
Yeah.
It's hard to set that down, man.
Right.
It's like,
Did you like that? Like being that active
I
all the
liked being
time?
busy.
Yeah.
I really did. But by the time, you got to your senior year of high school, you were kind of like, wow, it's a lot of stuff, And then you start thinking about, man, I got to go to college and I got to, be independent and learn this stuff. And the thought of just,
and they keep doing it.
right. I'm going to concentrate on this to make sure I can do this and not have as much of a load, essentially.
So-
That makes sense.
2 years generals. You play football all 3 years, 4 years.
I didn't play the first year. The first year I didn't play. The following 3 I did.
Yeah, because you were probably walking around campus and the coach was like, why isn't that kid playing?
He looks like a Viking. We should get him on the team.
Big kid.
Let's get that kid. I think our DN retired and we need a new tight end here.
Right.
Yeah. What did you play position wise?
Defensive end. Initially, I was going to play tight end, but we had a Concordia at that point in time ran a double slot back, triple option heavy offense, which they didn't really utilize at tight end.
Yep.
And so then I pretty much went ultimately to defensive end, which practices were always much more fun on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Way better.
Oh God.
Yeah. I was a linebacker playing football in high school.
Yeah.
And it was always,
Right.
It was like I either had to play center or I could be a linebacker. I'm like, nah, center's boring.
Right.
Like, that's just not that fun.
Exactly. Linebacker. For sure.
Way better.
If you can pick, if you can be that versatile to do both.
Right.
So then 2 years generals football, and you get the 4-year gig at that. And so what did you do after that when you had to go to the next level for the DPT?
For school, yeah. So generally for physical therapy, to get into physical therapy school, you have your general prerequisites. So you don't need a specific major similar to what med school would be. You just need those prerequisites and take your exams and certain, the GRE and things like that.
So what did you get your degree in undergrad? Was it
exercise physiology?
Okay, so that makes kind of...
Right. And a minor in psych because I had one course away from a minor because of prerequisites for physical therapy. And I was like, well, I might as well get a minor while I'm at it.
Yeah, or just to help for dating.
Yeah, that too.
It's nice to have that in case you run into some crazy partners or spouses.
You gotta keep it on your toes.
So what is your spouse's name?
Rebecca. She goes by Becca, yeah.
Okay, so Becca, the cool gal that looked like a sweet, like, badass Viking in the picture.
Yeah.
So we should have had her too. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so did you meet her at Concordia?
Yeah. I actually met her. I was taking some retaking some prereqs in Minneapolis Community and Technical College, and she was studying to be.
Hold on a sec.
You were retaking?
Oh, no.
Yes.
So why were you doing that, Mr. Moen?
Let's just say that some of the hardest courses I've ever taken in my entire life, even with grad school, has been at Concordia. It was a really good course. The hardest course was Nat and Phys. And you can ask anybody who worked with Dr. Ivan Johnson in Concordia. AMP, 2 semesters.
You on your knees.
Oh yeah, so I retook that, and actually I met my wife in an anatomy class, because she actually was right. She was taking
what hour of the day was this class?
Right.
Was this a night class?
She was taking prereqs because she got into physical therapy school too.
I hope she's watching.
Right.
Sorry.
So
she won't watch this.
She won't watch.
None of our wives watch this.
She's got other stuff to do.
Well, you guys are idiots.
Okay, sorry, we're totally
but anyway,
way off subject.
So she got into PT school and decided she didn't want to do that. Ultimately, she's a biochemistry professor.
PT
at MSU.
Good for you.
Biochemistry. I failed that class.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Right.
Wow.
But yeah, it's kind of fun. My first impression of my wife, I'll never forget, because I was like, God dang, that girl is always late. She is never on time. So people ask me, what'd you first think of her? I was like, she's not punctual. But
I was like, well, she's not late.
Was she cute though?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, then you can kind of get away with some stuff.
Yeah,
if you're
sure.
really good looking.
Their kids are going to be like 9 feet tall because he's, I don't know however big he is, but his wife's like 6'1" or something.
Yeah.
Like my wife's tall, and his wife's taller than my wife.
Yeah. Well, Kelly's got to be 5'10". Yeah.
So she's late, but she caught your eye coming in late. So maybe.
Right.
Maybe she
that was
did it
the
on
plan,
purpose because she's like, I need
Probably.
him to see me and not like when everybody's coming in.
We can go with that. I'll go with that.
Probably.
Yeah. Or maybe she's just late.
That too.
She's just a late person. So,
Is she still late?
Yeah, not so much.
All right.
She's a procrastinator.
She's growing up.
Yeah. I don't need to call her out too much. But.
No, so you're an early person. I mean, not might not like saying get up.
He was
early,
the first person. Usually, I'm the first person here to the podcast, and you beat me.
Here's
first
me in a
guest.
nutshell.
You're an early. You're an early person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on time. If it's 4, I'm there at 3:58, 3:59. I'm right there.
Yep. Drives me nuts.
Yeah,
But whatever.
But I had to work to be an on-time person. I
Really?
swear to God, like this straight up discipline.
Because you were late?
a late person. Not all the time, but enough to where I was like, man.
Late drives me crazy. Like,
I know, it
personally,
pisses people off.
drives me absolutely bonkers. Like, there's no more frustration that you can put on me than when I'm late. It drives
Really?
me nuts.
Huh.
Hate it.
See, and I would take somebody being 10 minutes late and then 25 minutes early.
Well, I won't be 25 minutes early. I'll be like today, I showed up 10, 15 minutes early, which is normal for me.
Yeah.
But like for a meeting or something, I'll pull up to the parking lot 8 minutes early, walk in 5 minutes early.
That makes more sense to me. But if someone's like, well, we had a 4 o'clock appointment with you, today, and you're like, okay, it's 3:25.
Yeah, that drives me nuts too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just wait here. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I won't feel the pressure of your early presence.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know.
It depends on the situation.
Yeah.
If it's somewhere you've been before, if it's something it's important to you, you know, you're
Yeah.
gonna. I'll show up early, probably earlier than necessary. But
It's gotten better because of like the cell phone. I'm like, I don't enjoy that time you have with your phone now. That's it's amazing. Unless I
Right.
know they don't have a phone, and I'm just like, well, maybe you had a long drive. I don't know. So she's punctual. She's not punctual. You guys start dating. That thing happens.
right.
So but you stay on your track. She becomes a biochem professor, and so you take the retakes, and then you're at Minnesota Twin Cities.
Yep.
Now?
University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And it's a like 2.5, 3 year program. The way that they're set up is their first, you get pretty much all your coursework out of the way with a few clinical rotations here and there, but then you finish with all rotations, which I feel it works really well. But yeah, it's about a 3 year program. And then
So where's Jared at this time? Because
he is working, twin brother is working at this stage, he's working at initially Health Partners.
no doubt, I forgot about health. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Health Partners, and then he worked there for I don't know, like a year or two, and then he ended up getting a job at United Healthcare.
Was he PT as well, or
No,
did
he went to college in St. Olaf.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
For healthcare management, and I don't, to what he did at Health Partners, I can't recall. But he ended up being like an account executive or something like that at United Healthcare.
Okay.
Which ended up bringing him down to Scottsdale, getting a promotion to work with different accounts down there.
But still with United Healthcare, right?
Yep.
So, have you guys ever talked about why you both went the medical influenced route? Like you went PT, and he went into that field. It was
Not really. I don't know why.
just no idea. That's so interesting to me. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just like, is your mom nurse or like aunts, uncles, any
No,
things
really,
like?
there's not much
Interesting.
for medicine in the family.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. The medicine in the family is kind of distant, and it's just kind of new as well. Like I have a cousin who's a pharmacist and another cousin who's a cardiologist, but again, that's all relatively new, right?
I never thought about that. I just whatever, because we probably hung out like I don't know 500 times. I've never, you know what I mean, ever, because he went healthcare management and you did.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Well,
Okay.
my sister graduated with a political science major, and
God.
she ended up going.
No, sorry.
but she works for a branch of United Healthcare now
course.
too. So she
Yeah, like every time I hear that, you're like, oh god. I got a poli-sci degree. I'm like, all right, law
for
school's
you.
coming. Here we go.
Yeah. It's almost
Yeah.
that.
It's kind of
That's
funny that my wife got into law school too, and like orientation, she says, "No, this ain't for me."
She's
That's
like,
almost as bad as a history degree, philosophy degree from University of Minnesota Duluth.
so your wife gets sent to PT school and law school, and then becomes a biochemistry professor.
So here's the
mean, it's
deal.
pretty smart,
Before
you know what I'm saying?
PT school, she was in a PhD program down on UCLA.
Okay.
Yeah, so she essentially didn't get along with her clinical instructor down there, who is currently not allowed to have anymore, or not clinical instructor, primary investigator. So that professor is not allowed to have students anymore. So my wife came back up here, thought she'd go into PT, didn't go into actually she got into law school, decided she wanted to do that, got into PT school, started a little bit of that, didn't want to do that, and then she didn't know what she wanted to do. I said, sounds like you like school, you better stick with it. So she finished her PhD at the U.
Okay.
And then and now she's a professor. So she's where she's supposed to be.
At
I think.
MSU?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and in one of the, and I'm totally kidding, science people out there, but one of the real hard sciences, not the soft sciences, or the social sciences, but a real science like biochemistry.
Biochemistry.
Not like
There's a real answer.
like macroeconomics. Sorry guys, it's not a science. No offense.
History,
Okay,
philosophy.
so anyway, so you stay on the PT path, you finish your rotations, which for non-medical folks is like clinicals or on-the-job training.
Yeah, pretty much. Almost like a residency for a physician, but not quite the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you wrap that up and kind of bring us up to give us some pins? Like, what year is it? How old are
Right,
you? And are
right.
you
So,
dating? And are you?
let's see, around 2008, that's right when I started PT school.
Okay.
And around 2011, I graduated from PT school, and I worked at Hennepin County Medical Center for a while. I had a rotation there too as a student, and was there for a little while and kind of enjoyed it. It was great. The stories you could talk about forever because the crazy stuff that happens there is
Yeah.
it's wild. But I eventually ended up working for Summit Orthopedics in St. Paul,
Okay,
and I worked
yeah.
there for roughly 2 years. About that time, my wife finished her PhD and then ended up getting a job down in Mankato down here, which brought me down here. And luckily, Mayo had an opening, and I've been here enjoying it ever since. So yeah, I've been down in Mankato here since 2013, and yeah, absolutely enjoy it.
So you come down here in 2013. What?
Just laughing.
Sorry, I
He's
got
like sitting there, and I'm like, I wonder if he's gonna ask him a question, and then you're like, so you're about.
Well, you know how it is. It's like you got kids texting you about stuff, and I'm just like, you can't go to the wild
it.
zone.
I get it.
Love you, Pam
just- I'm
DeMarce. You're the best.
Just give you a hard time.
Yeah. So, okay, so you moved down here. You have 2 kids, right?
Right.
So 2013 is, I don't know, Connor's 5,
Two.
2, right?
Yep.
And then you got pretty much have a baby.
Yep.
Cora's, I don't know, 6 months old.
6
a year
months
old or
around
something.
that time, yeah.
So when you switched from HEMC and Summit and came down here to work for Mayo, what building were you in?
I mean, here.
Yeah, here. Like, were you?
Well, Madison East location was relatively new.
Yeah.
At that stage, but not extremely new.
And you started there?
But how you with Mayo Clinic Health System in town here, you start by learning how the hospital works because you'll have your rotations there. So when you need to work a weekend or cover for somebody in the hospital, you know how to do it. You know where things are in the process involved. But I primarily stay at the Madison East outpatient location because I primarily work with orthopedics and sports medicine patients. Not too long ago, I got my specialty in orthopedics, which is kind of a different process too. But
so what does that mean when you say you, I
I'm a
work
board?
in orthopedics?
So essentially means I'm a board certified specialist in orthopedics, which you essentially take coursework, you study, you pass a test.
So
you
what's
log some
orthopedics
hours.
though? Is it like knees and hips and elbows?
Essentially, you
and
have have a
shoulders?
surgery for your knee joint, shoulder joint. You have back pain, knee pain, general musculoskeletal injuries. You're going to go see an orthopedic physical therapist. Same thing if you had, you twisted your knee in a football game. You're going to go see an orthopedic surgeon.
Gotcha.
Generally, what orthopedics is, yeah.
And then-
Musculoskeletal injuries.
I should come see you for all the goofy aches and pains that I have. I thought of like 5 as you were like this, and if you have that, I'm like, yeah.
Which I've seen. I'm just trying to look at my notes too.
all those.
They, which just as an aside, there is a bit of a burden if you are, if you're a physical therapist, and people learn that information.
You may have some neighbors stopping by from time to time.
You know what I mean?
Which is completely welcome.
They're like,
Well-
that's one cool thing about my job and being a physical therapist is that you have a skill that you can help people with, and it's not just like I know how to do something on a computer, or something like that.
Yep.
But it's a skill you can take with you and bring with you everywhere, and nobody can ever take that away from you, and it's helpful for people. And so some people will ask if I can help them or if they can come over, and they might feel guilty about it. But honestly, it's nice to be able to help with, make it easier.
like
for
when your wife walks in the room and Jordan's on top of you, and you're like, "What's Jordan doing to my husband?"
What are you doing there?
He's got a bad back.
He had a Your doctor said he needed a backiotomy.
Just thought they
You thought that too.
and doctor said he needed a
Backiotomy.
Talk to Samson.
Jordan's like, you don't need a backiotomy. Just come here. Let's do this. But he's like right behind you, and he's like,
Yeah, we get it.
Can I? Are you good? I was like, I'm comfortable. I'm totally good. He's like, just
This is gonna get a little handsy here.
okay. But try this. Do this, and you're gonna have to. I was like, you look back and you're like, this is actually really nice. Thank you. I feel
so much
I
better.
feel so much better right
Very
now.
appreciated.
It's like, thanks, man. This is what you do all. He's like, yeah, pretty much. I was like, do your hands get tired? And he's like, no. I mean, sometimes, but not really. I'm pretty used to it now.
Yeah.
But you get like from a medical perspective, standpoint, like I've done that where we used to live by Jim and Jeremy. I mean, I said that wrong. Kim and Jeremy Berger. Got that right now. And I cut my finger super bad. It's like 8:00 at night. I'm like, oh, dude, I don't want to have to go in and get stitches. Like my wife's a nurse, so she looks at it. She's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. And I'm like, this is stupid. So I call Jeremy. Think you could stitch that up? He's like, yeah, I'll be down in 10 minutes. Not a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm being like the super Sally, like, oh my gosh, it's going to hurt. He's like, it's
bleeding.
fine. Yeah. He's like,
It's bleeding.
Like, this is like nothing. This is absolutely like zero on the totem pole. And I'm thinking, I'm like, it's everywhere.
Oh my God, you're my hero.
Bleeding out.
I'll never fish again.
Yeah. Oh, it was bad. You can still see the scar, but he took care of it. It's like barely. So if he's listening, which he probably won't, but you could barely see the scar. He did a great job.
Wonderful.
You should send it to him.
Should.
So the question I have is, it's related, and we'll get back on the kind of our loose agenda. But my wife, being in the medical field, being a nurse for a long time, and I was teasing her the other day. She's been in the medical field for 24 years, going back to 1997. So her comfort level of being in somebody's like
In their grill.
space, you know what I mean? And I think Lisa does like OBGYN. I don't even want to go there
Yeah.
because we're in such a sensitive cancel culture.
Yeah.
But I just assume like it's pretty personal, right?
Yeah. Well, it's no different than what you do every day. You just get used to it.
Sorry, I got the cold hands.
Right.
But that's totally true. It's like, okay, well, I'm here to do this. And,
Yeah.
okay, all right. To a normal person, that would just be unfathomable.
Right.
Yeah, so
But-
going back to 25-year-old Jordan Moen, when you first have to go like, can you get back there? And is there a fear or anxiety to get over that? Because it's another human being that you're trying to help and work out.
Not really. It's kind of an interesting thing. When you grow up in a small town and absolutely everybody around you,
Yeah.
you don't really have a social anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, so the physical nature of that, it kind of transfers, I guess.
Yeah.
So I never really had a problem with handling people, touching.
Are you a
joints.
hugger?
A hugger?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a hugger.
Yeah. That would just make sense.
Yeah,
That makes
sure.
sense.
Totally.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
But funny enough, though, my wife, she started PT school and decided she didn't want to do PT school because she didn't like to touch people. So
Yeah.
there's that.
I mean, at least
it is a real thing.
Yeah.
She likes to touch really, a specific person maybe that she, got married to or whatever.
Right, exactly.
But
That's just how I like it.
so once like when my wife was doing her clinicals, I think they called them clinicals back then. But
Yeah.
Anyway,
Probably, yeah.
right. So she's doing the urban, school setting, going to Clark University in Dubuque, Iowa, which you can argue is in an urban setting for that area, sure. But they do the rural clinics, and so she goes, and does her clinical rotations as a nursing student, and my wife's, really extremely professional, and she's a top-notch nurse and always has been. It's just her personality, right? It's like Mary Poppins is never wrong. It's what I say to Kelly all the time. She's like, I hate you. I'm like, well, okay. But so she goes and does this, this rotation, and she comes out from rural Iowa, and she had pulled a really large, it had to be just like belly lint and sebaceous stuff out of a large belly button.
Sounds wonderful.
To do just like basic hygiene and cleaning, right?
I think we found the title to this episode.
Right, exactly. That sounds just wonderful.
Glorious.
Jordan Moen, belly lint.
Belly lint. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, how? I was like, well, that sounds great. That's good for you. That's really good care, and you're really helping. And I was like, well, how large was the? I want to call it like a nugget, but I can't think of a better word. Like this impacted, like, how long had it been there? She's like, years. It was maybe the size of a tater tot. So when she came home and told me that, I thought, you got to have, like, you got to get over some stuff to be in somebody's personal space, right? And be really close to them, because you're working with, especially surgeries, right? There are incisions and joints and people's, like, depending where they had the surgery,
Right.
some tough angles and things that you have to kind of set all that stuff aside.
Yeah, and there are therapists that work primarily with wound care too, and you're going to see some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I don't.
Not me.
No thanks.
No, so-
I don't mind wounds. I just don't want to treat them all day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be hard. So when you get your rotation and you start doing that, what kinds of things have you seen from being in an urban setting to a rural setting in terms of the kinds of patients, like mobility, injuries, and things like that?
Right. Well, the thing about rural areas is that, especially if you're a physician, if you're a therapist out in a rural area, you can imagine that your availability is much less, right? Where
Okay.
you need to be the jack of all trades if you're going to be a rural physician, which is actually, it's a real problem nowadays, and it has been for a long time. And they're really trying to get physicians. They're really trying to get more physicians to come out to rural areas so that their needs can be met, to the point where the government has been providing some loan forgiveness for some forgiveness, loan forgiveness to go out and serve those underserved areas, those rural areas.
Yeah.
Works for me. You, sir.
I have a good friend of mine, Josie's her name, and hopefully she listens. She was like our mom in college, like the girlfriend of the group, like just would take care of everybody, her and Paul. So, but the interesting part is they're from Clontarf, Minnesota. Or no, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Clontarf, not Clontarf.
We've been through this. It's
We've been through
Connor.
this. It's Clontarf.
Clonarth?
Yeah, it's an F at the end. Clontarf.
Okay.
So, or Benson or Alexandria, if you got to like extrapolate to the metropolis. But anyway, when she when she graduated in the pre-med, did all the medical stuff, whatever, doctor now, because I don't understand that stuff. But they had a serious incentive for her to come back to that rural hospital because they didn't have anybody.
Right.
And so she was telling me about it. It's pretty amazing what she's doing now, and she does have to be a Jane in that case of all trades. It's kind of interesting to hear and see all the stuff. Not see, but hear all the stuff that she talks.
I think that's. I think humans are, like Janes and Jacks, just period. We're built to do that kind of stuff, and I think specializing is my opinion, but I think specializing is more for robots and computers, and that people should be generally good at a lot of stuff, and that you can be. But not everybody needs to specialize.
I agree. I don't think everybody needs to specialize, but it is important to have those specialists. Otherwise, you're not going to have those neurosurgeons who know how to remove that crazy tumor that nobody else can get to.
Or that AVM that they need to fix or stroke. I mean, I get that, but I think it seems more pervasive to me that everybody was told to specialize.
Well, I think at the same time, I think growing up as kids, you're always just keep going, go further, and never be complacent or happy with where you're at. Always try to climb that ladder, and I think probably that's one of the reasons you're seeing go further, specialize, just keep going, do more. Yeah, which in some cases works out well. But you're right. I think being able to do everything is generalized is extremely important too.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it's swinging back to that versus the whole, like you're going to do this one little thing. Mm-hmm. It can be really important, but it seems like there's a swing back towards, having a general way of doing things for all kinds of stuff. It's creative work, website building, cars. Can you generally fix things? Can you, someone's like, hey, I had elbow surgery. Like, I can help you with that. If it's a knee, I do knees too, because you need to be, to have some versatility in this marketplace. Mm-hmm. So would you say that the types of patients and folks that you see now, I'm 40, and we actually share a birthday, but we're not the same age.
Indeed, we do.
Just like a side note, mobility is really important to me. And so I'm curious.
Like flexibility?
Yeah,
Okay.
mobility and flexibility are, for some reason, becoming more of a fascination for me. It's not because I've been watching like Bruce Lee movies or something lately, but although I have. So, what kinds of things are you seeing for mobility for folks out in greater Minnesota?
As far as being flexible with your body, you mean?
Yeah, like can you walk upstairs, walk downstairs? Can you bend down? Can you?
The interesting thing about, outer rural Minnesota is that you're going to see a lot more farmers.
Yeah.
A lot more of those types of people. And just both of my grandfathers were just workhorses their entire life and extremely strong and extremely mobile.
Yeah.
And just, functioned till, whatever got them.
Yep.
And obviously, you see that a little bit differently in urban areas, generally speaking. But you talk about flexibility, and it's kind of an interesting thing because when you bring that up, a lot of research out there is really kind of pointing towards how when you were growing up, you said you gotta stretch, stretch those hamstrings, the old box test, you gotta reach past your toes.
Yeah, I was always bad
Which
at
I
that.
suck at.
I'm awful
bad.
at it.
I still
terrible.
suck at it.
But really, research is showing nowadays that stretching isn't really required to gain more flexibility. You can actually exercise or use resistance, like weightlifting exercise in general, as opposed to just purely stretching, say, your hamstrings.
But wouldn't you say, from like a warm-up perspective, before you're working out, stretching is very important at that point, but it's not necessary for more flexibility. Is that what you're saying?
But, to a certain extent, you could say, all right, yeah, go for a warm-up and then, stretch your hamstrings. Or you could just say, okay, go do 20 squats and then 20 lunges. Could be equivalent for the most part. You don't actually have to say, all right, you have to do this hamstring stretch in order to get more flexibility in your hamstrings.
From an injury standpoint?
Like, does it prevent injury? You know what I mean?
Not necessarily from an injury standpoint. From an injury standpoint, it's having your tissues warmed up and ready to move is a little bit different. Because say you're going to go, play a basketball game completely cold. Yeah, you might be a little bit higher risk at developing injury just because of the physiology of your tendons and your ligaments. When you have more blood flow, you're going to be a little bit more mobile in certain areas.
Because I've noticed that this summer I started running. I've never been a runner, but just where we live, it was basically a 2-mile run. From my place, and I had a little spot, and it was 2 miles. And I'd never ran, I think, 2 miles consecutive in my whole life. And then I was running 4 miles, and I was running, 10 and 12, 15 miles a week. And that for me was like never happened in my life. But what was interesting is before I would really start, I would do maybe a half a mile, wasn't maybe 3/4 of a mile. I would do just like a slow 3/4 mile jog. Then I'd come in, and then I'd stretch, and then I'd go out. And I felt, whenever I did that, and I did it diligently, I felt so much better. I wouldn't be necessarily faster, but I felt so much better about just getting out there and doing stuff and like lifting and all of that after my run versus not taking the time. Because when I was younger, I didn't really take the time to stretch. You just like walk into the gym and you're just like doing curls, and you don't really care. It's just all glamour at that point. But
yeah, I think it's like when I was a kid, I used to like watch Nat Geo or Discovery Channel, right? And it's like the Serengeti, and you see a lion, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't see the lion like warming up.
I don't see a lion out there stretching.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I used to think that, or you'd be like, well, the lionesses, which is probably not a word.
yeah,
but
they just got up from a nap and now they just ate it.
he's like,
a buffalo.
like, all right, come kill this. And he's like, all right, fine, all right, and then boom, he just goes and like gets it. And I thought, I think that, why do I have to do that? And they're like, is it a fallacy, or is it, and I thought about it forever, and still continue to, because I know folks that I think are phenomenally fit and strong, or can lift weights or run or do stuff. But if I ask them to like sit Indian style, or just to get up off the ground from a sit position, they have a hard time doing it.
Right. Well, it's
so I'm like, what the hell is that?
First of all, it's crisscross applesauce.
Oh my God. Sorry.
You can't say Indian position, whatever. However you do that.
crisscross applesauce.
It's crisscross applesauce.
Oh my God, I am getting old. Holy smokes! So if
Yeah.
people are sitting Native American style, they can't get up off the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're like, this dude can like jack weight, and he's really,
Right.
but he can't get up.
Right. But actually, what you're seeing nowadays is it's kind of nice because there's a lot of like I said, there's a lot of research out there that gives people a lot of information on how to get better at what they're doing, and it's not necessarily do more of what you're doing. Like for instance, runners, you want to run the marathons, you want to run further distance, you want to run faster. You don't necessarily do more and more and more of that. You got to cross train. Right?
Yeah.
Develop your strength, cross train, because in the end, if you just keep pushing, that tissue is going to eventually give. And that's when runners come in and say, my knee hurts, and what do I do? Well, you can't run as much anymore. And they look at you like, you're crazy. What's wrong with you?
You're like, go swimming, ride a bike,
Right.
do.
Yeah, go do something else.
We were talking, I play Sea League hockey, and that is the best workout I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it's the least, as long as you don't fall down, which I have a problem with that, but as long as you don't fall down, it's one of the lowest impact, like for your joints and stuff, like
Right.
knees and all that.
I mean,
Dude,
Heck
that
of
is
a
my
tough workout.
favorite way to. I mean, you get done playing hockey, a competitive game of hockey, and you're spent. I mean, if you were trying at all, you're just totally spent.
Yeah.
So but you work different muscles versus when you're running or lifting or any of that stuff, and the
feel the same.
versatility of doing all that I think is important.
I feel the same way about tennis.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh. You don't leave tennis not just drenched in sweat and just tired.
yeah, because of all the lateral quickness. And
Yeah, it's all
like,
plyometric.
It's up
Yeah.
and down, it's left and right.
You're not just moving your legs. You get, just head to toe, you're moving.
But there's a reason why Gordie Howe played hockey till he was like 83.
Yeah. He was like 56
right.
or something.
He's in his
and,
50s playing
yeah,
hockey.
played in the last All-Star game or something like that.
And like Chris Chelios played till, and
Yeah.
like the list, like Messier, and the
Yeah.
list goes on.
Yeah.
There's not 50-year-old hockey players, or those types of people in tennis. If
Right.
you watch, I think it was Australian Open. Yeah, it was last night between, I think it's Osaka and
Serena.
and then Serena, and you're seeing somebody who's 39 versus I think Osaka's like 23. I don't know that age gap, that 16-year difference. I feel that more now than I mean, I guess I thought, well, it's Serena and she's going to do really well and she's going to compete, and she did, but she did lose in straight sets, and but when she left that, like she left the, I guess when she left the court, I thought, how much longer is she going to be able to do this because of the nature of the sport? And
Well,
what impact has that had on her body? Because she's arguably one of the greatest athletes of all time, period, of any sport ever.
Right.
But she hits that hard, and she's not 40 yet.
If she served to me, I would I would just walk off the court. I'd be like, sorry, this is just not going to happen.
But like,
That'd be
what does
so
that
scary.
do to the body, and how do you combat that? I mean, what do you see in your practice? And if it's not a practice, but if it just
I don't know.
fix it, what is it?
But you can't stop the aging process,
Yeah.
short, without except for Tom Brady, of course. I mean, that's just the one exception. But
When's the shoe gonna drop on Brady?
I don't know.
Seriously.
well, it's
I want to see him on the parade again, on the boat parade. That's what I care about. Have you seen the videos of him?
Right.
Like,
I have,
throwing,
yeah.
he's like throwing the Lombardi trophy to
that's
the other
the
boat.
thing.
I'm like, that guy's awesome.
Anybody other than Tom Brady, that thing's going in the water.
Yes.
You-
Yeah.
You're a bottle and a half of tequila deep, and that thing's going in the water, but not for Tom Brady.
His like little giggly face, and he's like bouncing around, just
So-
hucks the Lombardi trophy. I'm like, wow. Anyway, sorry, we interrupted.
So does he need to apologize for throwing the trophy from boat to boat?
no.
And if this, if you don't want this in the podcast, we'll just cut it. But I seriously want to know, like, I think the silversmith is what it's called.
Right.
The guy that designed it, his daughter was upset, and it made national news. She wants an apology because he threw the Lombardi trophy between boats or something.
I don't think any
Yeah.
apology is necessary.
No.
I don't know.
What about the Stanley Cup? Think of all the crazy stuff that's happened to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
It's legendary what's happened
Yep.
to that thing.
Yep. Exactly.
You should be happy that people are just paying so much attention. I mean, of course, it's the NFL, but
Yep. I agree.
So,
How do you what were we talking about? The aging process and how
Yeah.
do
So
you,
what's the most common thing? Is it knees? Is it backs? And
head, shoulders, knees, and toes?
yeah, I mean,
Say all the above. But you talk about the aging process when it comes to running, running in particular. There's obviously a lot of people tracking, how things are going with long-time runners.
yeah,
And I forget what the percentage is, but every year your percentage of your speed and your timing of how fast you run and how fast you can run a marathon or 5 miles or whatever distance running is going to reduce by I think it's 2% or something like that. And it's just really there's nothing you could do about it. And yes, you can make improvements from year to year despite aging, but really in the long run, you're going to see that trend line go down, and there's really nothing you can do about it.
Is there like an optimal age of like physical, mental, like age? Like all of a
Yes.
sudden, this is a 3-year gap because
Yep.
I'm a hockey fan.
Yep.
And I see like you're talking like later 20s, like early 30s, but once
Yep.
you get to like 34 in hockey, now it's like Zach Parise. You're just old. And
or
your
unless
backs
you're
are
like
broken
Pronger and you've got some kind of like physical thing that makes you like where you can extend the window. But I think there is for, and I would defer, but I think for running, it's something like if you're a distance runner, it's like 30 or 28 or
I
something
think
like
after
that.
30 or 32, the trend line starts going downwards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't quote me on it. I'm not positive. It's something like that.
I just think about myself, like the mental capability and then the physical capability.
Well, and I think it varies on which sport you're talking
Yeah.
about too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
obviously football is a different story.
Yep.
Like if your kickers, they're going to last a lot longer than your
Yeah, you got a
your
friggin'
workhorse
Morton.
running back.
Yeah. Yeah, Gary
Unless you're
Anderson.
AP or
Thanks a
more-
lot, Gary Anderson.
I always liked Morton Anderson myself. I was
Morton Anderson?
always more of a Mort guy. But yeah, I think it's like that that commercial that it's old Jordan. If I need to say his full name, then I'm not going to do it. But you got old Jordan and young Jordan are playing basketball in that commercial.
Oh, I love that.
And I think old Jordan says, "You reach, I teach." And then he goes up to like do a layup, and old Jordan swats the ball away. And he's like, "You should have dunked it." And it just goes to show like these two different styles of game, same athlete, different ages, and like how you do things. Is it as effective? I don't know. Are you doing the same stuff? Do you have to play the game the same way? And where's that mind-body connection come in? Which I'm fascinated by that
Yep.
so much because
Well,
I think it happens, right? Like Kobe dropped 60 on his last game.
that's why you're seeing. It's why you're seeing sports psychology come into such a play because
That's Cinder Kamphoff. Same thing
Exactly.
we
Yeah,
were
we
just
had
talking
Cinder
about.
on the show.
Sandra
we
is
were just
amazing. We were talking
Yeah.
about this before, and I've met her and talked to her before, and she's an absolute gem.
Yep.
Appreciate everything she has to say. In fact, I'm not gonna. I've reached out to her talking about like me and my kids. Like when I grew up, I was a hothead. Like what can I do to kind of straight
know what
line
that's
my
like.
kid, right?
Well, no, I mean,
I was the total hothead.
So
yeah.
and it gets in the way of your play. So
Yep.
there's so much education, instruction, and following of this stuff. But back in the days of
I don't know. I didn't-
Jordan versus Bird, how much of that were they talking about?
I don't know.
Basically,
I mean,
I
because
don't think it was much.
because we've coached our kids in a couple different sports. We coached football together for a couple of years. We coached basketball for a year or two, and so we've coached each other's kids, right? And it's like, how do you instill what I think is a pretty nuanced, contextual way to think about things when your kid's just like, this is how your kid's wired,
Yeah.
And like my favorite sport is boxing. Like I grew up boxing, and still love the sport, and huge fan still, and I think it's on a comeback. But there are fighters that peaked at the weirdest ages, and you just can't tell when it's going to be. There are fighters that were amazing in their 20s, and then they just they fell off a cliff, right? Mike Tyson's a huge name. If you go look and see what his career was, he's winning like junior nationals at 16 and 17, like 3 years in a row. And then he's heavyweight champ, like 85, 86, right? He had a lot of fights after that, but not the same. And so it's like he knew he peaked then, but then maybe Muhammad Ali peaked in his 30s, like his early 30s. So, like exactly how you can tell when that happens, I think it's very different for each athlete. But there is a cliff. I do think there's a cliff, like, no matter what, except if you're Tom Brady, I guess. But I think there's a cliff, 35, 40, where you have to have some other elements of that mind-body connection really working for you, to overcome some of the physical limitations. Because otherwise, it's you're just like out of the league. You look at Adrian Peterson right now. He's looking for a spot, and he's how old's AP now?
34, 5.
Yeah, he's
He's got
not
to be
old.
35, right?
Yeah,
But for a running back,
he's
it's old.
old. Yeah,
Right.
But look at that
But how old is-
particular person.
How old is Frank Gore, though? Frank Gore was maybe even older than that.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Dude, I mean,
Couldn't even tell you.
he won a natty with the 01, 02 Hurricanes, right? Frank Gore.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
It was a long time.
So it's got to be particular with the person, I think, and there's some position specific things, but I think there's got to be a cliff at about 35 or 40 for most people. I'd say.
I think so. I think, especially the closer you get to 40. But, it depends on what activity you're talking about.
Yeah. So, can you speak to, and we've spoken about this. Matt and I have a couple times. It's like, do you talk about COVID-19 on the podcast or not?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have, and it's fine, and sometimes it just never came up. But I'm interested to see how something so close and personal, like what did you do to be a physical therapist pre and post COVID? Like what was that like?
Well, I guess the largest difference between pre and post COVID, for me in particular, was really just a lot of similar to many other healthcare professionals, is all about personal protective equipment. You have a mask or two, a face mask or goggles. And if you're working with someone who actually has COVID, which really in the outpatient world they're not doing right now, you're gonna, if you were, you'd wear a gown or something like that. But for me personally, it's really just when COVID first hit, literally our outpatient clinic shut down for like 3 or 4 weeks and had to make up completely new protocols, cleaning schedules, wearing this all the time, clean everything you touch, patients are spread out and all that. But for me, it's just, it's the same thing, just with a face mask and goggles on, potentially gloves, and then you're just kind of cleaning up after you. I think with regards to physical therapy, you try and it's kind of like what I think about with my kids. I want to make things as normal as possible and as personal as possible. If a patient comes in to see me, I want to make sure that they feel comfortable with everything we're doing, with everything we're talking about, and for the most part, I think it's gone extremely well. There was a big question, I think, when we first opened up again. It was like, are patients going to come back? Are people really going to be scared? But really, largely, people were trying to get back in droves. Just so really, for me, it's only been just the personal protective equipment. Documentation's obviously a significant factor too, but in the inpatient side, it's a bit different. You have a lot more protocols. You can't go into certain rooms, or if you do, you have to wear all this stuff. And initially, it was write your name on this list if you're going to go in this room, so we can track and all that.
So, do you do inpatient, outpatient, both?
I'm primarily outpatient, but we do across the board. You want to be able, you go in and you cover the inpatient team, or you work a weekend, so you're going to go in there and work on the inpatient side of things too, the acute care.
Do you work with all different ages? Like, do you have a 16-year-old with a meniscus tear? Do you have an 85-year-old that had a surgery or something?
We have specific therapists who will work with the really young kids who may have some like developmental issues or something like that. I will pretty much see 12, 13 years all the way as far as it goes. in the orthopedic realm. Physical therapy is there's so many different areas in physical therapy. There's wound care, lymphedema, vestibular care if somebody is dizzy or nauseous.
So what's lymphedema?
Lymphedema is swelling of the lymph, or not swelling, but issues with your lymph system. You would look at it like a really swollen arm, but really it's a drainage issue.
Okay.
Your lymph system is kind of the drainage system of your body to a certain extent. But the therapists who specialize in that, which partially, I'm really dumbing it down and I'm slaying it because it's much more complex than this, is just wrapping and trying to keep the limbs
For
to their
dumb
normal.
people like us, just talk the
Well,
lower level because I don't
Yeah, and a
understand.
limb therapist would look at me and be like, "It's really, really kind." It is much more complex than
You're
that.
so
but-
offensive.
right?
Dumbing it
Right.
down.
But then there's the pediatric therapist. There's the neurologic
tape this,
therapist.
it won't drain.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so there's quite a few different realms of physical therapy, and yeah, so
So how do you come up with a plan? Like if I have a bad elbow, whatever it is, I don't even know the injuries, but someday I'll probably come in and see it. But so like you have a bad injury and it's an elbow. Does everybody with that same thing get the same treatment? Is it based on the
not
person or the
necessarily.
severity?
Not necessarily. Years ago, you'd have just it's almost not quite a cookbook approach, but you'd have something closer to it. Right now, it's more of what we call a biopsychosocial model, where it's you have tissues that involve, you have anatomy that's involved, physiology that's involved, but also this person is a living person who has a job and has responsibilities and has all these things going on. So really, you got to take that into account. Like for instance, elbow. Okay, what's going on? Is it an electrician? Is it somebody who works in construction and you're going to tell them that they can't do this for a while? Well, that's their livelihood. So that's not going to work. So you can't just say do this. And there's many different modalities and techniques, approaches that you can take, whether it's from a physical therapy perspective or orthopedic, physical medicine, rehabilitation, physiatry, those different specialties. But it's going to be more specific to exactly what you have going on, what your complaints are.
Yeah. Because I think, like when I was a kid or even younger, say in my 20s, I thought of it more as a cookbook approach, right? Like you have, I don't know, plantar fasciitis or musky elbow or something like that.
I'm
And
working
like,
on
well, you
both
do
of
this,
those.
you do these things, you roll that out or, whatever it is. So it seems like it's changed to be more holistic.
Yeah.
And personal.
You're seeing a lot of different approaches. I mean, you see physical therapy has dry needling now, which is relatively new.
What is it called?
It's called dry needling, which is they use
No idea what that
right. Well, it uses acupuncture needles. It's not acupuncture.
Are you
Acupuncture
poking me with needles?
with needles?
Okay.
But they're
Yeah.
dry.
But they're dry.
But they're,
I like
but-
a wet
but-
needle
but-
myself.
So
Like a
right, a good
Prefer
wet
that.
needle.
I've
good
had
wet
both.
needles.
Wet
Really,
needles are way better.
that's most effective for my treatment.
Especially when he's hugging me in
So dry needling,
Hugging you with, I got these needles I'm gonna put in you.
so
poke you with these dry needles.
what's the
Right.
difference between acupuncture and dry needling?
So acupuncture
I have
is
to Google this. I'm sorry.
Acupuncture is more of it's a Eastern medicine type of approach. I'm not an acupuncturist, so I can't tell you much about it. Other than that,
Okay.
they utilize it's channeling and not channeling, but messing with your chi. And your chi is your energy, and they use meridians and levels or whatever. I'm not an acupuncturist, but with dry needling,
You're
what it
offending
is,
every acupuncturist right now.
I definitely am.
so.
I definitely
No, I'm just
am.
kidding. I'm just
But
totally joking.
which-
I'm sorry. I should stop interrupting and let you answer the
it's
question
good.
that I
It's
asked you.
good. Because a lot of people ask this and they want to know, you mean you're going to stick needles in me? Why is this again?
Yeah.
But what it is you're using the body's self-treating mechanisms to help with pain relief.
Gotcha.
So, for example, this is one of the simplest ways to put it, is if I stick a needle in your skin in a certain spot, into your muscle, there is actually a response that your body releases dopamine or dopamine-like chemicals to help with pain relief. So instead of taking opioids, you'd stick a needle in, and then you have an opiate released in your body from your body. It's not that simple, but you could think of it that way.
Is there wet needling?
Wet needling, not necessarily wet needling.
Sorry.
But
If it's dry needling,
but-
there's got to be some other. There's
so
got to be an opposite.
you could consider it that. It'd be like taking a steroid and injecting it topically.
Okay.
The dry needling involves monofilament needles, which mean there's not hollow bores like a syringe. You're
Okay.
not going to inject anything.
Yep.
So it's not hollow bored. So that's the big difference. But anyways, there's lots of different things that they're using
I
nowadays.
probably failed biology. Is that TV on?
Yeah,
Oh, you're on it?
I did. I just picked it up.
Look
It's
at this.
awesome.
So,
Jamie, check this out.
Look at you go.
all right. So dig this. All right.
Wow.
So
We
health
need,
line.
we
This
need a
is health
fourth
line.
camera.
You know, dry needling versus acupuncture, which is right for you.
This is hilarious.
And I guess there are unique qualities that differentiate the two. One's been done for thousands of years, right? So what is dry needling? So here's a picture of dry needling. Stop taking me down.
See if you can find a picture of Hellraiser in there.
Right.
Jeez.
So there's dry needling
Wow. That
right there. Ease muscular pain.
I told you it's a real thing.
I know.
this guy.
I agree. So why is the term dry? Because they put it in trigger points in your muscle or tissue. Filiform needles are fine, short stainless steel needles that don't inject fluid into the body. That's why they're dry,
That's why they're dry.
because they don't inject anything.
Yeah,
All right.
indeed.
So there you go.
wow.
There
we
you have
just
it.
verified that you are
Not a
not
liar.
full of shit.
I'm
Oh my
not,
Oh,
God.
we got to bleep.
not a liar.
Oh crap.
Whoops, we got to bleep.
No. So I just never heard of it. So can we talk about cupping?
Cupping?
Yeah. It was kind of a big hubbub with Phelps was getting cupped
Right.
during the Olympics.
After that, I was a little bit
Yeah, it has the big circles,
not
right?
frustrated, but I was like, oh man, now everybody's gonna want to do this, and it's really
They go like,
it's a form of soft tissue mobilization, and what that is moving the mobilizing the soft tissues of your body. And the soft tissues include your skin, the fascia under your skin, the muscles, and the fascia around the muscles. Fascia being some of the connective tissue in your
Okay.
body. Think of fascia as like a raw chicken breast. You have a filmy substance on the outside.
Yeah.
That's the connective tissue. Is fascia.
so they separate that with the cup for the skin on top to pull it
Essentially,
out.
you're trying to improve blood flow, vascularity. You're trying to decrease restriction, because if you hold say you have a certain way of walking or moving or holding yourself in a certain particular part of your body, that's going to stay that way for a long time, or you're potentially going to keep that there for a long time, which means it's going to be stiff and immobile. You try and move it, it's not going to move as well. And sometimes you need to coerce that. So cupping, you can do that with. You can use that, just manually with your hands. You can do it with needles. You can do it with actually exercise.
So how does cupping? Because I read a little bit of it, but I don't really understand exactly how it works. Like, do you know the actual process? How does that even go?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways you can do it. There's a lot of different techniques, and you can use plastic cups. You can use more rubbery type of cups, silicone type of cups.
I've seen
where-
both now.
To where you can use, they have like little guns that you'll hook up to the plastic cups, and you'll just create a little suction. And you can do what's called parking. You just leave it there. You can move it or oscillating it. You can drag it, and you usually have some form of oil or emollient or something that's going to make it easier on your skin. For Phelps, they sat there and they just did around pretty much his upper trap and his in between his shoulder blades, because he had been, you can kind of see, just abusing these muscles, and he wanted essentially to get relief. I would argue that the application there during a
can
bout
see
of
him
exercise,
here.
I'd say is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were doing it because just he was swimming so many different races, and they were trying to decrease, fatigue and increase recovery or whatever. It just it seemed kind of strangely superficial for the amount of time between races. Like,
Right.
is this really helping?
I
or
can't
not?
tell you why they would do it. Maybe there's some research out there that shows you an acute response to cupping that increases, I don't know, the ability to activate a muscle. Maybe. I would say it's a stretch. I'd say go the old-fashioned way and give it rest as best you can. But
Right. Unless you're swimming, 50 meets or whatever. Interesting. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, that's there. And again, there's more than that. You can hold a cup in a certain spot and move a limb in a general vicinity to try and mobilize that, to indirectly mobilize it. But so there are many different techniques. Whether you use a gun to create the suction, whether you just create the suction almost like a plunger type of mechanism,
Yeah.
or Eastern
these-
cultures use like wicks and take the air out with a lit wick. We don't do that. Stay away from fires.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them do like the smoke in the cup to suck. It was like
Yeah.
they put it in there and it comes up, and I thought, I don't know, this
No,
is,
that's I don't know if they practice that in Eastern medicine, but that's where it came from.
yeah.
But it's using the flame is not the typical technique.
I'd go the flame route.
I know. I,
Just
like,
go
I feel like
full
I
on
would,
flame.
I
I'd
feel
be like,
I
what
wanna-
were you doing? I was cupping. Like, what does that mean? It's like they put some flames like in a cup in my
They
bag.
put heat in
Well,
the cup, and they
Another
pretty cool.
relatively
They
new
really
thing
stretch
is
my fascia.
you guys heard of blood flow restriction therapy? So they actually have these cuffs that you can put on your arms or your legs, and they cut down a percentage of venous blood return to your tissues, to your muscles, and it creates a response in your muscles that releases hormones to increase muscle mass. And it's not like it's going to just jack up your muscles, but it's pretty much you say you put a cuff on your thigh and you do high repetitions over the course of 4 or 5 sets with these cuffs on. You take them off, and you're exhausted. You can barely do anything while you're doing that. It'd be like working out for a half hour instead of the 5 minutes that you do that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because it's relatively new.
I've never heard of that. I've heard the opposite, to like keep fluid down or to wrap a knee or like put a cuff on.
Right, and that's more generally like that's more like joint swelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
To where this is more like venous blood return. It's actually having to do with your blood vessels and the blood returning to
So
your.
it's like vascular manipulation for muscle growth. You're
Exactly,
trying
to
like,
create a hormonal response.
So when you like take that off, blood comes like, I guess, blood rushes in.
So
for growth.
essentially the starving of your muscles from blood creates a hormonal response.
So it's like, hey, we need stuff down here.
Right here, come on, guys. It's like creating fatigue extra early, and really, because that's one of the things that you need to increase strength is to create literally a physiologically response. Exactly, failure.
Yeah.
You know, lifting 1 pound dumbbell every now and then ain't going to get you nowhere. You got to go to failure, challenge yourself, fatigue, fail, and that creates a response.
So what are I've heard this, but like from and I don't even know where I heard this, but I'm not that
internet.
I'm not that old. Yeah, look it up.
You're pretty old.
I'm not that old. These guys are super old, but I'm 34, and so
my God.
I'm thinking about
That was the worst age.
It's a rough year.
this is good year. Trying to be positive, but but
You're in
so
the cave.
I heard that like of all like the workout stuff to do, like if you could just do a certain set of things, it's almost, I've heard, this is a friend of mine, but they were talking about like the Olympic lifts, like, you know, not overdoing it, but like the
Compound lifting.
the stuff that I used to do for football. It's the squats, it's bench press, it's the cleans and stuff like that. You just do anything, like do that and you'll maintain strength, not necessarily lose muscle mass as you get older. Is that right or is it not?
No, that's true. If you stick with it, you should maintain it. Your body as it ages tends to recover slower. But if you keep up with it, no, you should maintain it. You won't gain it necessarily. But if you stick with it, you
So
you
like
should.
my 550 pound bench press is probably not gonna. I at least can maintain that.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I just remember a kind of height of PED mania, seeing guys like, Barry Bonds is kind of the poster child, or like, I think it's maybe Ray Caminiti, or, Jose Canseco's on there, and Clemens and so on. I saw these guys play in the 80s, right? And so I knew how big they were. And I had their baseball cards. You read the stats, you can tell. You're like, Roger Clemens is this big, and Barry Bonds looks like this, like I have his upper deck card. And then fast forwarding 20 years and seeing these guys absolutely defy what I think is like physiologically possible. Because these guys are 40 and they're just absolutely jacked. And you're thinking, I know you can make your back bigger, your shoulder bigger, but how do you make your head bigger? Like, how do you go from being a 7 1/4 And I have a huge dome, like straight up. I got a big ass head.
Yeah.
I'm like 7 3/4, especially if I got my hair growing out. It was bad. But I'm not going to see 8.5, like because it's just not going to happen.
Then you go to law school and you're just like your brain's getting so large.
No, your brain gets smaller in law school, I think. It's your brain or your heart, like one of the two. So like to maintain some level of like compound lifting, which is kind of interesting because I think we have a couple different body types in the room. Like for me, like I'm a hard gainer, right? There's like skinny dude, 6'2", 180 skinny guy. And so for me to isolate anything was a waste of time. So the only way I could put on any muscle was to compound lift and just eat a ton of the right foods and so on. But sometimes just for calories and compound lift. So once I got to where I wanted to go, you could isolate and do different things. But I'm guessing for, a guy that's like your size, you'll get the benefits of that, right? But because you already have more muscle mass or, a frame, you could probably isolate some things. Like you in hockey, I'm sure like hamstrings, glutes, quads. Every hockey dude I know, and my buddy Brandon Hayes is a big hockey dork too. Dude's got like a huge butt and big thighs and really strong hamstrings because you work the crap out of your legs. And so every like hockey dude, you have hockey butt. Like you can't like buy jeans.
Yeah.
There's like a bunch of goofs and like memes on hockey butt because you can't go by regular Levi's.
Dude, they did that. With,
They did it,
with
I swear to God.
Sidney Crosby. He was
Yeah.
on like the road to the Winter Classic,
Right.
And he had to go in to get pants,
they
like
were
to
like-
get fitted or something. And he was explaining to the people, like,
I've
you
got
can't
hockey butt.
just go. He's looking at the camera. You can't just go to
It's
a
new
normal
term.
place.
I've not heard the hockey butt.
Hockey butt.
Oh yeah,
You know.
it's a thing.
I don't know about like vascular strangulation, but I can tell you about hockey butt.
I'm no joke. Like,
That sounds.
we talked first episode. We talked to Marissa Brosterman every time I go in and see her.
Yeah.
Which, these are my Mavi jeans that I got from her. But I like walk in and she like hands me the first pair I was ever in there, and I'm like, this ain't happening.
You're like,
she's like, well, where is it tight? I'm like, everywhere here. You
kind of-
it's like this is fine. This is not so great. And, like top half, it's just not happening.
I am
because
here.
of that.
Do you have a hockey butt section?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
over
what
there.
I need.
And you go over there and you get these like these huge wide leg,
But you hold them up, and it's just like that doesn't
like,
look.
How does that fit? on
Do I
my
look like
butt?
that?
You got any MC Hammer pants?
That's basically what hockey butt does.
That'd be
It
great.
does.
So I think for you to compound lift, or
When you get home, just Google it.
we should pull up hockey butt. But
Don't do it at work. You might get the blue screen.
I know
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
You're like no. So if you work out like that, and compound lift, you would like put on, I think, mass. Or for a guy like you have muscle mass and big. So, but I think as you get older, just period doing compound lifting, I don't know. It's very important to me to be able to do the squat as I age. It's important to me to have shoulder flexibility and mobility as I age. And so I try to compound lift. It's much, much less weight. And like doing a pull-up to me is really important.
Yeah.
Like being able to do certain things, like tie my shoes, zip my pants, like I'm serious.
Did you have a point like you do pull-ups in gyms in school and gym and stuff, and then there was a point in my life where I didn't do a pull-up for a lot of years,
like 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I start going back to the why, because it's like you just kind of figure your life out. You're like, God, I really kind of suck at tying my shoes again, and I need to figure this out.
I have to pull my foot up like
Yeah,
this.
like feel super flabby and stuff. So I go back to the why. I'm like, I could do a pull-up.
No,
I'm
you
like,
can't.
No, I barely made it up, and I'm like kicking, and and so now I could maybe do 5.
Right. But
And
it's
I was
hard.
like, and I felt like such a Sally. I was like, I used to be able to do this, and that's what kind of got this whole thing of I need to do this, because if I don't maintain, the downside is gonna be significant.
Pull-ups are never that important to me. Not gonna lie.
No?
I got ridiculously long arms, and if I gotta try and pull up 6'5" of a pretty thick,
Total Viking
pretty
man.
total Viking mass.
He's like, I don't
You
do
put your
pull-ups,
Viking
but
shield on the back and then do your pull.
Pretty much.
Yeah, he's like, I was more in a boat building,
Yeah.
Floki.
you know.
Gods.
But for me, it was the ability to do a pull-up. I think more for the mental,
Yes.
like
That's
for
what
the
it was for.
mind-body connection for me. Mm-hmm. Being able to squat and walk stairs, or like watching the inauguration, a month ago, I guess now. Like the most fascinating part was seeing people walk down the stairs, because you're like, ooh, he grabbed the rail. He's going to be a bad leader. Or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, did you guys see that too?
Right. When you talk about these milestones and think about things that you want to get done, and it's kind of funny because I think about that from a Minnesotan perspective. What do I have to be able to do?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talk about hockey. So I grew up in a small town, and the closest town was an hour away that actually had a hockey team in high school, because we had no resources. And so I never learned how to skate until I was about 25 years old. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I had the double skates, the double blades, when I was probably 4 or 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I told myself, you're from Minnesota, you got to know how to skate.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the greatest hockey player, because in the state of Minnesota, if you're going to be a good hockey player, you're going to start when you're about 3 years old.
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
2.5.
That and wrestling.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So I need to know how to skate. A few things. You know how to skate. I should be able to figure out how to bench press. I need to know how to kill a deer.
Yes.
Yep.
That was another one.
If you can kill and get a deer, like if the apocalypse happens,
I want to know how to do that. In fact,
okay.
it was just last year I killed my first deer with a bow and arrow, and I never felt more like a Minnesotan or more like a Viking.
Yep.
And a good friend of mine, Jeff Kletchka, literally taught me this from start to finish on the whole thing. Shoot it, wait, track the blood, the whole thing. We drug it out to his place. All that stuff, like, you never feel more Minnesotans. When you talk about milestones, I think about those types of things.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I need to know, I need to do that at least once.
Yeah.
We have one more mic, and that's a dude. We should have Jeff come on the podcast. Like, soup to nuts, deer, guitar, music.
Cool guy.
I mean, creative.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just would be freaking awesome to have on here. Just the nicest effing guy possible. Excuse me. Highly skilled in a bunch of different areas.
Yeah.
Just be a great guest. It'd be fun to have him on. You should come back. We should do that.
That'd be fun.
But yeah, I mean, just the mental kind of connection between those things. Like being able to do the pull-up. We like to eat protein on this show, so no offense to anybody. If you're gonna shoot a deer, I think it's one of the supreme athletes we have roaming around our parts here, and I enjoy eating deer meat.
They're delicious.
It's good. But to be able to do that, to track it and all those kinds of things, it's this mind-body connection. I don't want to lose the ability to do certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, doing a pull-up, I think is really hard. Bringing up 6'2", 180 was 200 pounds, not that long ago. It feels better for me, just to know I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or if it's, I don't know, it's like.
Well, we talked about. I was talking a bit ago about the biopsychosocial model of care and how we treat our patients, and a lot of just physicians and medical professionals looking at general health. It's more than just a physical thing. It's more than just your cardiovascular health, your lungs. It's more about your mental health. Mm-hmm. And I think you're seeing that in society today, where you're seeing all sorts of crazy things happen. And nowadays with COVID, it's of the most extreme importance. I've talked to patients, I've talked to friends about the importance of taking care of yourself both physically and mentally. Mm-hmm. My kids in particular, like, I'm trying to make this whole COVID thing as minimally invasive as possible. I want to keep things as normal for them as possible. Mm-hmm. Keep them safe, show them this, tell them how to keep their distances, make smart decisions. But other than that, hey, you're fine. Everything's good. Mm-hmm. Because last thing we need is these kids growing up being extremely afraid of socializing or doing things that they should be doing, should be learning, should be advancing. So
It's a weird thing. I mean, this is one of those aging apps, and that's me as an old man, right? I swear to. And so there's my buddy Brandon, and so if you want to put the camera on that, so that's me as an old guy, right? And so when I'm 80,
You got a fair amount of hair.
I know.
Look at you.
It's unfair.
Look at that.
I've got one. This is my buddy Tony Miller and Brady, and sorry, there's Brandon Hayes, hockey butt guy.
Hockey butt.
And so, but
That's
the point
hilarious.
is, I want to be able to like walk up and down the stairs and do stuff and go in the field and shoot pheasant and do all the things that I like to do, catch fish, hold a muskie, hold a fish out. So I think in my mind I think that's what you're helping to do for people, even
Right.
if they don't realize it or not, that you're helping to keep their current lifestyle or make it better.
You're not. So someone comes to me and asks help with their elbow pain or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't want to help them with only their elbow pain because maybe that's not what's really the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, I'm going to help them with their physical problem, but there's things that have led to that. I want to help them get back to doing what they love.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell patients so frequently, so many times that when it comes to this pain you have, it's so very important for you to be able to stay active and not even think about this, because that is absolutely essential for your brain for reinforcement. For example, someone who has a knee replacement.
So what do you mean by that? To not, where's the brain connection? Is it to not focus on the pain, or is it a distraction? Where's the connection?
So here's an example. So a knee replacement, right? Okay. So they have this physical problem and a healing problem, right?
Yeah.
So you have all these things that you got to check off the list with regards to a knee replacement. They need the motion back, they need the strength back, they need the control back, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to try and keep that pain down to a minimum and manage that pain on top of it. And eventually it goes away. But besides that, you don't want to concentrate on just that. I will actually have my patients work on, say, oh, here's what I want you. I want you to go and I want you to walk this distance or this amount of time, or go, do this, staying active and doing something that you love. Because when you do that, you're going to be doing something and you're not going to really be concentrating on your pain, because it is so easy to dwell on it. And your brain actually literally, so you talk about the mind-body connection, your brain actually can create more pain in a particular spot.
Okay.
There's actually a phenomenon called central sensitivity. For example, say you have back pain.
Yeah.
And you may have something structural, or you may have nothing wrong at all. It's just a muscular problem. And more oftentimes than not, it's just muscles that have been beaten up and you've been beating up your back. You can sit there and catastrophize about what's going on in your back. Oh my God, I'm going to be paralyzed. I'm going to need surgery. I'm going to need injections A, B, and C. I need to take drugs. I need to do this. I need to do all this stuff, or and just panic. And that fear puts you in a kind of a vicious cycle and a spiral of inactivity and weakness. Or you can stay active. You can take your mind off of these things and progress much more in a healthy fashion. If you go the fear anxiety way, your brain again catastrophizes. And what it actually does is it changes the receptors of your nerves and your nerve endings.
Wow.
So your nerve endings
Yeah.
have
Holy smokes.
many different receptors in your nerve endings. Your nerve endings can have hot, cold, it can have pain, it can have vibration, it can have touch. And it changes, and it can change over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And if you do that catastrophization, you're all this anxiety, inactivity, all these unhealthy things, your brain starts to put more pain receptors at the end of your nerves. So something that, say, poking your shoulder, poking your back shouldn't be painful. Your body now experiences that as, wow, that's a lot of information, because instead of, say, 10 pain receptors, you're getting 100, and that message is 10 times louder than it was before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the basics of central sensitivity. So the whole mind-body experience, the mind needs to be healthy too in order for the body to succeed. So obviously the mind's a big part of the body, but say the mind and the joint or the muscle connection is much more significant than just stimulus from a touch or emotion.
So do you think that we are just now like what are your thoughts on how much we're discovering or where we are in discovering that mind-body connection? Are we just like scratching the surface, or
Oh, we are just barely
okay,
scratching the
yeah,
surface. I think, you think about the research that has gone on over the course of the last 50 years, really from a muscular joint perspective and the connection with the brain, and
yeah,
it is really just the beginning of it.
okay,
This whole central sensitivity thing is a relatively new thing. We have a technique that we utilize. It's not simple as just let's say like an ice pack, but it's therapeutic neuroscience education, and really the approach is you're training someone's brain to respond to stimulus in a different fashion, and it's a hands-off treatment. And this is something that's again relatively new. So we are literally scratching the surface on the connection. So we have.
I mean, do you think it's new to us, or is it is it new to the world, or east-west kind of thing? Because I think there's a connection to figuring out, like if you smell something and you're nauseous, and then your nausea goes away, right? It's not an actual pharmaceutical. It's less industrial era type of thinking, right? Like when I was a kid, I thought, oh well, if your heart goes bad, you get a new heart, right? Like you like change the muffler on your car. So it's like this whole mentality of we're a machine, somewhat. Like you need a knee, you get a new knee, or you need a hip, you get a hip. It seems like in our lifetime that has changed, where I thought people got physical therapy after surgery, like my whole life. I saw, got a new knee, and I'm finding out now, preventative maintenance,
right.
to maybe avoid surgery. Like it seems like things have flipped. Being a non-medical, just a layman idiot, I think people go, do everything you possibly can do first, and then if you have to do surgery,
That's something that's absolutely switched in the last few years,
right?
too.
Right. I mean, that's what it seems like.
This opioid epidemic has really spun things in a positive, in a good direction, because thankfully, was it the CDC that came out and said this is a significant problem and you will be held accountable if you're chronically prescribing these opiates.
Eventually,
these opioids?
yeah.
To the point where like now these physicians that are prescribing these medications say like, I can't in a responsible fashion or in an ethical fashion continue to do this. So what am I going to do? And really that's where people end up going to physical therapy, and they're starting to see a lot more results. Oh wow, this physical therapy thing is really working.
I wonder if the name itself will change in your career.
It's possible.
From physical therapy to something like what that phrase you
Preventative
used.
therapy or something.
It was like physio something life. You said something earlier. Because it's not, like what I'm hearing is it's not exclusively physical at all. And you are trying to connect these two things that don't always work together. The body and the brain. So I guess I would put it out there. I would bet the name changes in your career to something else.
Possible.
Here's one question.
Sure.
How much does stress have to do with the success or failure, or maybe not failure, but how much does stress have to do with whether it's pre-injury, after injury, before surgery, after surgery in the patients that you see?
Well,
Physical or mental stress?
Mental stress.
So
The brain side of things.
From a couple of perspectives, I can answer that from a couple of perspectives. Anytime you add more anxiety to the mix, it's going to be a tougher road, right? Fear creates inactivity or avoidance, right? So like from a surgical perspective, if you don't know what's going on, you're not well prepared, the chances of you doing well or doing better are less. Not that you won't succeed, but it may take you longer, you may have more complications, things like that. Interestingly enough, when it comes to stress, every year around Christmas time and the holidays, the frequency of patients coming in with just random pain problems, not necessarily like a sprained ankle
Sure.
or like an orthopedic injury, just pain. My back hurts, my shoulder hurts, my neck hurts, those things skyrocket simply because stress levels, both from a physical and a a physical and an emotional level are significant because, all right, so it's getting colder out here in Minnesota. Doing all this stuff I got to do to prepare for the holidays. I got to cook. I got to go buy these gifts. I have these people over. I got to clean my house. I got A, B, and C to worry about. The next thing I got to do, and the next thing I got to do, and that all adds up. So that anxiety and that factor is significant, and where you literally see physical symptoms from it.
And that's what I read a biography on a number of biographies.
There you go, dude. Sorry, I've been watching a lot of Steve-O podcasts lately. Yeah, dude. This guy just played rules. JMO is the best. Oh my God, I love this guy.
I was reading a biography on Rockefeller, and it was so interesting because he had a routine where he would actually he'd work a little bit in the morning, he'd go back, take a nap, go for a walk, and then he'd work a little bit in the afternoon. And his biographer, and as they're interviewing his children and all this stuff, it was so interesting. They're like, well, he got so much done, but he had to sit and think. He had to be quiet. He had to, the stress level. Running Standard Oil, the largest company that had ever been on the planet at that point, and he's running it, and he's doing it in what we would consider part-time basis, but not really, because he's constantly thinking about stuff. But he needed to be in a lower stress environment. He needed to stop, be quiet, and think, and he was able to do that and run a large company in a way that he died when he was 97 or something years old. I mean, the guy.
For sure, dude.
Because he managed that stress level. And
Right.
I think there's so much connection between physical impairments and mental stress or stress at work, financial stress, any of those things. If you can mitigate that, the physical benefits, I think, are substantial.
For sure. I mean, you manage that. We have a good example right now. There's this old dude in Omaha, Warren Buffett, right? Mm-hmm. Right, the Oracle of Omaha. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. He's the same thing. Mm-hmm. He drinks like 6 Cokes a day. He has a couple burgers and hangs out. Mm-hmm. It's like that's going to catch up with him eventually, right? Evidently not.
Yeah.
Because he exercises, he takes a nap, he doesn't kind of does this thing, the same that Rockefeller did. And we have a pretty similar interest level in best or maximum use, right? Not work 9 to 5 and those kinds of things. What's your best use, maximum use at certain times? Like for me to do the podcast at the time of day that we do it works for me because I'm this is one of my peak creative spots, right? Yep. The jokes are easier, the references are easier, my brain's working better. If we did it at say 9, that my brain doesn't work that well. So if I'm making decisions or being creative or trying to manage things, now's a good time for me. It doesn't work so well, for other people, but I think that's where it is. Buffett does the same thing. Where like Jeff, I always screw his name up, Bezos, right?
Either one.
He had an article come out, and he said he putters around, his word puttering, until about 10 a.m. Because he wants to hang out with his kids and take them to school and do whatever. And that's how he gets, his stuff done. So I think there's some connection there where I've seen dudes they're 42, but they're 72.
Yep.
And I think, what did you do, man? What was your job every day? Well, I did this, and I know other people that did that same job, and they don't look exactly like they're not in your shape. And there's the things you can adjust for, right? Family and stress and that kind of thing. And when you hear the backstory, unless it's something that's genetic or an injury related or something like that, it's not very surprising. It's like, what'd you do? It's like, well, I worked 80 hours, 60 hours for 20 years. I've been married 4 times.
Yep. High stress all the time.
High stress, just burning through stuff. And, what's the stress hormone? It's not melatonin, serotonin.
I think that's changing generationally.
Cortisol, right?
Yeah.
I think that's changing generationally. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But my most productive days, this is pre-COVID now, when I would go to the Y, say 3 times a week, and I would go over lunch. And I'd leave it at, say 11:30, 11:45, and I'd get back an hour and a half later. And the days when I actually took that hour and a half out of my day to just go do something, and it was just at the Y. It didn't matter if I just walked on the treadmill, if I ran 2 miles, or if I lifted for a while and then sat in the sauna for a half hour. Didn't matter what I did.
50 assisted pull-ups.
Oh, you should have seen just rocking them. But taking that time out to just give your brain a just kind of a pass for a little while and just do something physical, not think about work, not look at emails, not do any of that. Those are some of my most productive days. Right. And I felt way better about myself.
Well, and so like we're computer guys, in our field, pretty much it's like phone, computer, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So do you punch into work and like in the morning and like do a punch and then see your patients and do your thing and then you punch out or clock out or something like that? Or you like show up and have a schedule and you do that and then when you go home, are you home? Like, are you done?
Well, yeah, so that's another thing that brought me to why I work in therapy is 'cause I want to leave work at work and I don't want to think about work.
See, I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah,
I messed that up.
So
should have done your route.
Seriously.
Yeah, I know.
The nice thing is, so when I show up to work, like, yeah, you got a schedule, and it's like I don't have to like clock in or anything like that. But the nice thing about my job is that I show up and I have to review, like, you got chart review and look at the patients, what's coming up ahead of you. But at the same time, you get to work with people. And that's what makes my job so wonderful. Yeah. And it takes the stress out of the job. Mm-hmm. Even though, like I said, I like to leave work at work and come home. And really, work is in another world. But I think you talk about those 80-hour weeks. Yeah. Like if you can work 80 hours a week and absolutely love what you do,
it's different.
You're probably going to do well. Mm-hmm. But if you just despise what you do and you work 80 hours a week, you're going to be driven into the ground and you're not going to survive.
Things break down.
Right.
We were talking before you asked how I knew Wade, and you remember those days when we were on the road doing those. Man. Like, we would do 2 seminars a day on top of working a normal shift that day, basically at the office. Yeah. But it was like, it wasn't all year. No. And it wasn't every day. But we knew Tuesday and Thursday for 3 months in a row. I mean, we got home Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9, 10, 11:30 at night sometimes because we're on the road busting ass.
It was a 12-hour day.
And that wasn't unusual. But I remember coming home and at the very end of those seminars, I was like, this sucks and we just need to be done.
Yep.
But I remember the first 12 that we did, I was like, dude, that was a freaking awesome day.
I enjoyed it.
Because we were just busting ass.
It was fun.
It was worth it. And it was exciting. But you make me do that every day, and I would just lose my mind. It wouldn't work. But like you're talking about, you have to figure that work-life balance out to kind of keep the stress level down. So anyway.
Well, fascinating. I think we're done. I think we're getting there.
We're at like 2 hours now.
Yeah. So if you want to go, I mean, we can keep going, keep the meter running. Let's do this. But so we kind of closed the show, and something that I want to know is, favorite band. What's your favorite band? And yours is probably like August Burns Red, right?
Of all time. Yeah.
So I want to say favorite band, living and dead. Okay. So think about that, and then I think your camera is here, and so at the end we just go. If you have anything going on, thing you want to promote, say hi to family, friends, mom, dad, all that kind of stuff. And so I'll kick it over to you. I'll say my favorite band is Queens of the Stone Age.
Okay. Fair enough. Dead, I would have to say it's a tough one between Prince or Queen. Both absolutely phenomenal. Changed their times ahead of their times. Living currently, I would have to say Chris Stapleton. Okay. Right up top there. I love all the stuff. If it's not Stapleton, it's Eric Church. Right now, anyways, it changes on a regular basis.
True Minnesotan.
I was gonna guess like JJ
Gray. I
maybe
absolutely adore
Foo Fighters, but okay.
I do like Foo Fighters, and they definitely belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
They will.
Right. They're a candidate, I believe. Right?
Yeah, they'll make it.
Anyways,
sorry, Dead for me is Waylon Jennings. There
You
you
know,
go.
I was thinking dead for me, either like Merle Haggard.
Yeah, he died
or,
last year, right?
Yep, and he's dead now. Or like I just go straight back. Like my grandparents got me into this when I was young, listening to Frank Sinatra.
Oh yeah,
Like
Yeah, that's
just
yeah.
like that music and that
Yeah.
time, and like you
Me
think
too.
about like the
Yeah.
the you know I think about like the poodle skirts and like
Yeah.
the 1950s cars and like the you know you roll your cigarettes in your sleeve like
Oh,
that
yeah.
time frame. Like I think it's I don't know if it's necessarily Frank, but it's just that time frame, you know. But that and then August Burns Red. But hey, I don't know if I told you this, but I have almost eclipsed August Burns Red. And now I'm not even remember their name because I'm on camera. What is it? Never mind. I'll bring it up
Is it like
later.
Gary and the Jets?
One I forgot. Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. That's it. I'm sure it is.
It's Gary Puckett, the Union Gap.
No, one thing I for a band, not a band. That I have to mention is Tupac.
Tupac.
Oh,
yeah,
I grew
yeah,
up
yeah.
with
Dude,
Tupac.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there's-
if you want to see like some inappropriate stuff that we won't record, just throw on some Tupac and we'll just like
There you go.
I
It's
know every word.
So, yeah, I mean, I wanted to go there, but I'm very happy we went into more of the I guess specific side of what you do because I'm fascinated by those things, and those topics and that mind-body connection. If we didn't get there or didn't work out or whatever, I thought, well, we'd always talk about hip hop and all that kind of stuff.
Era is the name of the band.
Era?
ERRA. Era.
Okay.
ERRA.
Absolutely amazing.
And so I still want to talk I still want to do a hip hop show about if you like Eric Church and Waylon Springfield and all these other country artists, you still like Biggie and Tupac and all these things. How'd that come into play? So I think if you I think it'd be good to have Kletchka come on and you come on. We can talk about like blues, rock, hip hop, and just do that.
He'd
Yeah.
be great to have him.
Yeah.
So if you want to say hi to anybody, that's your camera, and then he'll sign
sign
us out and then we'll go.
All right. Just say hi to my wife, Becca, my kids, Connor and Corey. I love you both. And I'll see you soon.
All right.
Dun 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 dun. Thank you, JMO.